things that you can do fairly easily. And actually, Sandy has seen most of these before. Oh, you already
I
started
just started the recording.
Okay. So we're going to talk about some things we can do to help provide students with more structure and support. Because one of the things we do know is that adding structure to a course, providing students with more information about what's expected of them and so forth is really helpful. There have been a lot of studies done by about that. Vicky Sathi and Kelly Hogan's book, Inclusive Teaching, focuses to a large extent on the importance of structure. And so Brightspace provides some really nice tools in order to do that. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through some of the things I have in my course in terms of just some simple things we can do. And I'm going to encourage you to try some of those as yourself as we do this. So you should see now my screen up there. Is it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not seeing it on the big screen here, so that's why I wanted to be sure. And we're just going to look first at the way a typical module is structured. And so here's one where if I go into one, this was from my fall class, my fall asynchronous class, and it should load pretty much any second, any day. And let me make this a bit bigger. Okay, so the way the module is laid out is I have a little image at the top of it, which relates to the topic that is being discussed. In this case, it's labor markets. And then there's an overview for the module. And students are reminded about the dates in multiple ways. All the due dates for the class and all the requirements for the course are listed in the syllabus, as we'd expect. But each module starts off with a little bit of an overview. And in the overview document, it has a nice little summary here of what's required. It describes what the basic topic of the module is, what they'll be focusing on, the specific learning objectives they're going to be focusing on in this module, and then it provides them with a list of all the tasks that they have to do. And in particular, they have to complete a study plan, which is a Waymaker module, which is a personalized learning platform, which is sort of like a watered down adaptive learning platform where students work through the material, and basically it's assessing how well. It starts off with a self-check where it's testing to see what they know coming into the module, and then telling them what they need to focus on in the rest of the module. And in there's formative assessments, so they get to read through some material or watch some videos, and then they get to test their understanding, and they can take those as many times as they want until they've mastered the material. And it's got a nice color-coded system where basically it turns green when they've mastered the material. It's red if they haven't started, and it's yellow if they're in progress, basically. And then there's also oh, this is the iClicker module. Okay, so this may be a different one. Okay, never mind. In any case, there's also some videos I created with embedded questions, and there's also an exam that they have to complete. And they're given multiple attempts on unlimited attempts available on the video quizzes. They're all videos I created with covering the material that addressing material that students tend to have the most challenges with. And again, the videos are generally between 7 and 12 minutes. And generally they're asked 2 to 5 questions in there just to check their understanding of it. And they can do those as many times as they want. And then there's a module quiz at the end. And again, with multiple attempts. And then there's a cumulative exam or a series of exams in the class where every other week they have an exam which focuses mostly on the 2 most previous modules, but also draws randomly questions from earlier parts of the course. So it's providing some interleague practice along with the block practice that occurs in the study plan, the study plan, and in the formative assessments and the end of module assessments. Now, but the next thing here is a checklist. And the checklist is a really nice tool, basically, that tells students what they need to do this week. It tells them when they should complete this. This is actually for my face-to-face class. I meant to click on my asynchronous class, but I use this in both my face-to-face and my asynchronous classes. And because this class is meeting in person and they're doing iClicker quizzes, it tells them before each class what they should do. These are the components of the study plan that they should prepare or have worked through before class to get them ready for class. These are the specific videos that they needed to complete to prepare for the class materials. This is a part of this, and then this is for the next class meeting. There's normally this class met on Tuesday and Thursday. So there's a couple of class meetings before each of these, well, in each module. And then it reminds them of all of this. And basically what these, what the checklist does is it provides students with a list that they can check off as they're going through the class, and it reminds them of what they need to do. And I put that right up at the top, right below that overview of the module. And we'll go through how to create this in just a second. The other thing, though, that I do is I use a lot of intelligent agents, and I actually do that even more in my asynchronous class. So this time I'm going to hop out and try to join the correct class, because I use it in all my classes, but I have it a bit more in the asynchronous class because, you know, I do provide reminders in the class itself, you know, for my, well, in class, I get to remind them in person as well. But the intelligent agents are a really nice tool, and I'm going to hop over to this. And actually, I'd encourage you to try creating one. So if you want to take one of your, maybe your spring course shells, and just create, we'll just go through the process of creating a really simple one, but talk about how you can do more elaborate ones. Because what intelligence agents allow you to do is to basically check out something that students do and then give them more information based on their actions that they've taken in the course, that they either have taken or that they have not yet taken but should have been taken. So we're going to go here, and you get them by going into course admin, and under course admin you go down to the section where it says intelligent agents, which are under communication. Okay, and what we'd like you to do is to create a very simple one, which is called a login reminder. Is everyone in Brightspace or in a course in Brightspace?
Like you
No.
mean right now? You want
Right.
to?
No, that won't be.
Because once you create one of these, creating more of them is much easier. And as long as you have one to use as a template, it makes it much easier to create others.
And if you, and
We
if-
are recording this, so
Yeah.
you don't have to do it right now, but it's, you know, I'd encourage you
Yeah.
just to try it.
And if you make them, you know, broad enough, you can copy them over from one course to another. So it really is a nice feature. So once you create it once, you can keep using it in multiple courses across multiple semesters.
And once you create the first one, if you're going to do something for every course module, you can just copy it and change the dates and the activity that it's conditioned on. So we'll go with one of the simplest types of these, which is a login reminder. We've done this in some past workshops too. So we're going to click here and click edit. And name it whatever you'd like, but you know, name it something that makes sense to you. It's not, I don't think the students actually see that, but this is just one to create a weekly login reminder, which is kind of important in an online course, that students actually, at least at the bare minimum, they log in once a week. I use this in both my face-to-face and my online course because they all have work that they need to do each week. And it's partly to remind them, but it's also, I do a BCC to myself, so I also get notified if students haven't logged in. So I don't have to go to the progress tab to do it. I'm getting an email telling me what students haven't logged in the past 7 days. And then so put in a description that's meaningful, you know, weekly login reminder was something that made sense to me. And then you add a category, because you can have different types of these things, but you get to pick the category. And I call the category participation, where at a very minimum, the participation is to log in. Sandy, you have a question?
I do. Can you go back a screen? Because
Sure.
you started editing it, but did you create that as a new agent?
Oh, yeah, so that's
can
a really good point.
Can you show us from the
So,
start?
yeah.
Like,
So what you would do is you would create a new agent. Okay, so
and then you get
just click on
choices.
the new agent, and then everything will be blank.
And what are the categories
Well, and
about?
that's what you decide. And I'm going to go back to one here. So I'll do it as I did it here, because otherwise I may mess up. But you get to pick the category. So it could be a discussion reminder. It could be progress indicator. You could call whatever you want. So whatever you want the agent to do, give it a category name that makes sense to you.
And that way, if you have, let's say you have a login reminder, and you also have a, a completion reminder, you can put them all under this broader category of participation. So that way, when you want to look at all of your intelligent agents as they relate to participation, those will come up. If you have a series of discussion reminders in each module, you might want to categorize it in that way. It's really just a way for you to stay organized.
And it groups them together, basically.
Yeah.
But you do have the option of putting no category. So you can always add no category if you don't want one. But it helps, because one of the things that I've been doing, more so in a different class actually, is adding more and more agents every semester. When I see students falling behind with something, or they need more reminders, I put in more of those. I'll create a new category and group those together. So, the two I got here are just participation and discussion reminders in this class, which were categories I picked. That's only for your benefit to keep track of it, but it will group them together so that all the agents that do a specific thing are grouped in the same place in the list of agents. Okay, and by default, it will not be enabled. So that's generally the last thing you do. That once you get the agent all set up, you will click the agent is enabled. But the first thing you get to do is you get to pick scheduling. And so if this is something you want to do every week, you would select from the list. The choices you have here are no schedule. So it might be something you only do when you choose to do it. It could be a one-time run if you're only going to do it once. For example, if you want to have an agent that just warns students that their grade is falling below a certain threshold for a midterm, you can have an agent that's based on the midterm grade, their current overall course grade, that will then send a customized email out to students for students who are below that grade threshold. Or if you'd like to praise students who did really well, you can have an agent that will go out to all the students who are doing better than a particular grade threshold. So, you could call one kudos, as we do in Starfish, for example, or or you could put in you could have a category of warnings, or whatever categories make sense to you in terms of the communication you're doing with your students. And it could be done one time, it could be done hourly, which I would really not encourage. Unless, for example, I suppose if you had a group of people who were working on NSF grant deadlines and there's a specific deadline, you might want to send out hourly reminders, but you don't want to be spamming your students, because they'll put it in their spam folder.
Yeah, it'll lose its impact if you do it too much.
Yeah. We used to have this capability in Angel, and someone at Finger Lakes Community College caused the whole SUNY system to shut it down because he put it into an infinite loop, and he was sending out emails to his students constantly for about 4 hours, and it was freezing up the whole Angel instance. And instead of blocking him from it, they shut it down entirely for a semester until we got it back. But in any case, I call this a weekly reminder, so I schedule this to run weekly, but you could pick whatever timing is appropriate. But again, it's either once, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, or annually. Annually wouldn't be very useful in our courses, since the course is only open for a semester. And then you determine, once you say it's going to be weekly, you determine whether it's going to be something every week, or it could be every 2 weeks, or every 3 weeks, or every 4 weeks, whatever you want. I do it every week, and then I pick the date. I pick Fridays, and I pick 7 a.m., but it could be any time. And you know, in this particular class, there's some work they needed to complete by Fridays. So I put in the start date for the end date, which was the end of the semester. And so basically I set this up to run every week throughout the semester at that specific time. Sandy.
So are setting start date and end dates important if we're going to course copy this?
Well, what will happen is when you do a course, yes, the course copy will move over to a new course, but all the agents will be disabled in the new course. So you have to enable them before they could be used.
Okay, so this doesn't do the, you know how you're supposed to say how many days difference there is between.
Well, actually,
It doesn't do this.
When you do a course copy, it will automatically update. So if you move everything ahead 364 or 366, I forgot whichever it is, unless it's a leap year, it will automatically shift all the dates. So if you're using the same schedule, it will automatically port the dates over, but I'm pretty sure you have to re-enable it when you do a course copy.
Okay. Thank you.
Because when you enable the agent, it does it for that specific date, and then it is disabled after that date has expired. I'm not sure about this one. It might automatically copy that over. To be honest, I don't recall whether I had to. With things that are one-time runs, and most of my agents are run one time, then it's disabled when the course is copied. I'm not positive about this one. So, but it will automatically update the dates. It's just a question of whether you need to re-enable or not. I shouldn't say for certain what happens, but I'm pretty sure you have to re-enable it. Okay, so everyone got that? Putting in the dates and the timing of this. The next thing you do is you put in the criteria. And typically you would put all users visible in the class list. Now, everything in Brightspace is role-based, so you could do it for people with different roles, but these are all the roles that are defined in the SUNY system. So you could do it for people who are Adirondack instructors or Adirondack staff, but we don't want to do that. They're not going to be in this class anyway. So you only want to do this for people in your class. So just pick all users visible in the class list. You might get it yourself, and if you have teaching assistants, you may get it yourself. They may get it. But on the other hand, if you're the instructor and you haven't logged in a week, you probably would benefit from that reminder if you're teaching an online class. But yeah, in general, just choose this because the other roles are not generally going to be relevant. There may be some roles in there for teaching assistants, but it would have to be for the Oswego domain. I would just put everyone in the class list. And then here, it could be either login activity or course activity. And in this case, this is just a login reminder. And the difference between login activity and course activity is login activity is whether they logged into Brightspace. Course activity is whether they actually open this course in Brightspace. And I don't care whether they're opening their calculus. Well, I do care if they're opening their other classes, but I'm most concerned about whether they're logged into this specific course. So I would choose course activity. Okay. If you choose login activity, it would let you know if they're not logged into anything in Brightspace, you know, any of their other courses. But we're generally more concerned about our own courses when we set up these agents, because those are the only people we can reach anyway. So you could pick user has not logged into the course in the last blank number of days. And I do it, I usually put weekly, so I put the last 7 days. You could do it every day, but then you'd be kind of harassing the students. So, but you could also, you know, automatically say, thank you for checking in. But again, you don't want to send messages to students unnecessarily. So having a message go out to students who have accessed the course during the last X days is probably not as useful, you know, because they know they've done that. And then, this is the simplest agent, so we're not going to do anything with release conditions. We don't have to do one of these, but because login activity is one of the most common types of agents, they're there by default. We'll go over the release conditions for other ones shortly, because there's many other things you can use to trigger some activity. And then the last thing to do is to set the actions, okay? And the first thing you have to choose is whether you take action only the first time the agent's conditions are satisfied or every time. Now, because this is a weekly login reminder, I want it to do this every time that criteria is met. You know, if it was something where you just want students to do something once in the course, you could send something out only if they've accessed that specific thing, that specific item, whatever it is that's triggering it. And in that case, you'd want it to only go out the first time that it's evaluated. But typically, if it's something that you're going to be checking weekly, you would have it do it every time that that action is enabled, is satisfied by the user. Okay. Does that make sense? Any questions? Okay, so then the next thing is what you want to do to notify the user. And the simplest thing is to, this is one thing where this isn't as powerful as the agent we used to have in Angel. Pretty much the only capability here you have is to send emails. And so send an email to the students. The email replies will come from the system no reply, so they'll see they can't reply to it. And what you do here is you type in curly braces, initiating user. So you have to do that. And I'll put that right in the chat if you want to copy and paste it. So if you put in anything else, it's not going to go to the students that had this trigger. So make sure you paste that in if you want the agent to determine who is going to be getting the email. You know, it could go to a specific person, but then it would go to that person every time that agent is triggered. Sandy.
Okay, I'm a little slow here.
Oh, no
So
problem.
that's not a drop down choice. I have to type it in just
You have
like
to type
that
it in or paste it in.
with those little funny
With those curly
parentheses.
braces, right?
Yeah.
It's the shift,
Oh my
the
God.
shift
I
square
see.
bracket
Yeah.
to the right of the P keys.
Okay.
No spaces in capital I, capital U. I'm not sure if capitalization is essential.
Is there like a help thing to remind me of this when I forget in a
Yes.
week?
Well,
Yep.
what you can always do, well, we'll have a copy of
Yeah.
this, but more specifically, if you do a search for intelligent agents in Brightspace, you'll see it, you'll see some documentation on how to do this type of thing.
I'll drop it in the chat.
I never
And
know what to
so-
do. I never know what to do with all the stuff that you put in the chat, to be honest with you, because I'm
Oh, well,
writing,
you-
I'm handwriting
But
stuff
you can just
down.
click it and then, if you're handwriting, it's not gonna matter. But if you had a document, a Google Doc or something, or Word doc, you could just paste, copy and paste.
Okay.
Okay, so you tell it who to go to, and who it goes to will be whoever the triggers that event, whatever the criteria is. And then the CC is if you want it to be copied to other people. You probably don't want to notice going to individuals that are copied to anyone other than you. And you don't even necessarily need to let them know that you're seeing it, because you don't need to have them responding to it and having you get responses. But basically, they'll send you a note if they're having problems typically. So you could put a CC for your own address, or you could put in a BCC, and then students will just see the message going to them. But I like to use either a CC or a BCC. And in particular, since some of my classes have up to 400 students, you know, I figured the BCC is just a little bit simpler. They'll respond to me if there's some issue coming up. Otherwise, you know, they'll generally, you know, address it. But in any case, so now if you do have a question, though, here is some specific. Yeah, actually, there it tells
Oh, there
you.
it is. Okay.
This is something fairly new, so they do have it there, and you can copy and paste it from there if you'd like.
And
Okay.
I just dropped a link in the chat to some of the replace strings that are used often in Brightspace. And if you go to the to the heading that says creating replace strings within Intelligent Agents tool, that'll give you a list of all of those that you might want to use.
Yeah, the most common one by
Yeah.
far though is this.
Yeah.
Because many of the others only apply at the administrator level and, you
Yeah.
know, in terms of system-wide settings and
Yeah.
so forth.
So this is really what you want.
So
then-
John, can you show me, where did you see it built into Brightspace? Was it at the end of that?
Oh, yeah, it's right below where it
Where
says.
did you hover?
what,
Oh, there.
What special email addresses.
Perfect. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And then here, it does something similar, but what replace strings can I use in the subject of the message? And here, you see,
Yeah.
most of these aren't going to be that useful,
Yeah.
but you could do it right here, or you could do it in the message itself, you know. So I generally just put I just put text in there, but the most common one is initiating user first name. So that goes to the, basically, those are the only two I tend to use, initiating user and initiating user first name.
Yeah, I don't think you would really want to include a lot of the others, because some of them have like multiple characters and numbers and, you know, just things that are.
It's a SUNY
are not
global
meaning-
ID. Basically, most of those are the SUNY global ID because they use the same thing in like 3 or 4 fields, which is was a bit of a pain. But in any case, you put whatever subject you want, and then you address the email to students, and I just put hi and then their name, and then it's just a very simple email, but you could make something much nicer than that. But I just put, it's been over 7 days since your last course access. It's important to keep up with your work in the class so that you don't fall behind. And then they'll automatically get that email if they haven't logged in a week before that. Sandy, go ahead.
Okay. So you just said, so you're typing this message, but are we putting initiating user first name in there, or you're typing their name? You just said I'm typing their name.
You put in the initiating user first name and it will automatically substitute their name when the email goes out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be.
So we have to put that. Okay. I thought that would happen automatically because we put it in the 2 line up above. But you're saying we also have to type it
That's
into
the
the message.
actual email address of the user. So that would go to
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Joe Smith at oswego.edu or whatever.
It's like a mail merge almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we have
field
to put that little initiating user first name. Oh, first name. So that's different.
Yeah, so that's
when
different.
when it comes into your inbox, it'll say, "Hi, Maggie. It's been over 7 days since your
okay.
last course access."
Gotcha.
And if you want, you could put in initiating user first name, space, initiating user last name, and we'll put their whole name. But, you know, keeping it a little more friendly and informal is fine.
Can I ask 2 quick questions?
Sure.
So when we do that to initiating user as the email, do you know if that is emailing them only within Brightspace?
Yes, it only goes within Brightspace, but most institutions that defaults to a copy going to their email address, but
the
only their college
notifications.
email address. That's a SUNY-wide decision that, you know, we're not able to change.
Right. Well, and yeah, I got to figure out on my campus if the students are changing that, because I did have several who were not getting even my announcements. So somehow their notifications for Brightspace were interesting. But so I wanted to confirm because I figured it was within.
I had a major problem where I had about 48 students in my large class this fall who had email addresses at other institutions because the way SUNY set this up, it was their first exposure to the system that defined the email. And students had to individually go to the SUNY help desk in order to get it changed to their actual college email. So if they came from a community college and transferred here, they had to change it. Or if they had taken some college courses while in high school, they had to change it because otherwise it was just going out to an email address that did not exist. What we did, our local admins put in a little thing, a little box, what Kathy Dutton, I think, was the one who did it, so that when people log in, after getting complaints about this all semester, so that now it will say on the welcome screen when they log in that your email address registered for the system is this. And then if that's not ending with oswego.edu, it gives them directions on what they need to do to change it. And this was a really big problem because I was using iClicker and students were not getting able to do it because we have a campus license for it that's tied to their oswego.edu address. So a large share of my class had problems where they were not getting their scores or getting emails or reminders and other things. So no announcements or none of these things were going to them until they changed their grade. And sending them an email through Brightspace didn't help because it was going to some other school that they no longer had access to.
Right. Which they could still check them in Brightspace if they were trained to do that.
Yes,
But
exactly. They still see it in Brightspace, but they weren't getting the reminder to see it in their email. And a lot of students ignored those, the other ones in Brightspace.
right. So thank you for that. My second question is a little more what we're going for behind this, the intention or theory. I noticed yours looks a little like it's generated by the computer, and has that worked well for you? Or some of these, I'm guessing you use more as a relational tool, like I care that you haven't been in the class,
Yes.
right?
And I should have done that here and in others, but partly it's because I'm also using Waymaker. This is a more formal type thing, and I don't do as much with these, but in Waymaker, there's formalized things where you customize them that talks about all those things. It's much more friendly, and it's giving them feedback when if they haven't completed things by deadlines, and if the scores are dipping below, and it's reminding them about my office hours and so forth. But yeah, you can do that here too, and I just never got around to making this one a little more useful.
No problem. I just was like, yeah, I wanted that big picture, like how are you using, because probably having a little bit of both, right? Maybe I build one that's
so the other is
I've
more
been in
of
for
a
3
carrot.
weeks, and that
The
says
other is more of the carrot saying, look, you're falling a little bit behind. Here are some additional resources. My office hours are here. You're welcome to do it. But that is customized in Waymaker. This is more like, you haven't done anything this past week. You've disappeared. Here's a reminder you need to come back, but I probably could and should make this a little bit more friendly.
That's not where I was going. I guess I was saying, like, if I'm gonna do that relational level stuff, I may end this with my Alfred State email so they know they can just write me there, or like, you answered my question, and please don't feel like that's what I was saying.
Oh, no. It's a
A
really
mix
good
of
point,
computer and
yeah.
these are actually from me.
But yeah, and in terms of feedback, the most effective feedback, there was a study done a few years ago, is when you provide, it turns out that whole sandwich thing, by the way, of giving some positive feedback, something more negative and something positive, turns out to be completely ineffective and not really all that helpful. But what is the most helpful is when you start off by telling students that you have high expectations and they're capable of meeting those expectations. But these are the things they need to do to help achieve what they're capable of. That type of feedback has been found to be most effective in encouraging students to actually use feedback. Really significant differences in students' responses with that type of feedback compared to others. In at least one study, again, it may be a fluke, but the results were pretty convincing. It was a very highly significant result. So I do more of that within the Waymaker module, that type of thing. And then basically and you could put in attachments and files and other things if you want. This is just, and this doesn't go out to that many people. Usually it's students who completely disappear. And more in the first week or two, and very few later in the semester. And then once you do that, all you have to do is click on agent is enabled, and then it's automatically going to go out and do that. And so once you click on agent is enabled, click on save and close, and then it will give you your whole list of it. And so I had 5 students all through the semester in this big, in this class that got that email. So most students were logging in every week. But you also have the ability here to do a practice run. And a practice one doesn't actually go out to students, but it will give you a list of which students it would be triggered by. And I'm not going to do that because of FERPA here. I don't want to have a list of all my students who haven't logged in the past week, because it would actually have all my students in, because none of them have logged into the course because their access was shut down a week or so after their grades were released, just how it's done here. Okay, so that's one of the ways you can do this. But now let's create one from scratch just to show more about the capabilities that you have. So let's go back. Did that all work? Everyone get to that point? Okay, now, let's pick something. What do we want to do here? How about,
How about, kudos for a grade?
okay, so let's say, something like great work, and we'll call this, well, the description is just for our purposes, and we can pick a new category, and I don't think I have one in this class, so we'll call this kudos. You don't have to use the same name, I'm just getting lazy, but it's 4 letters, so it's easy. So let's say we want to do this again weekly. And so we're going to do it weekly, and let's say we're going to do that every well, maybe every other week. And we're going to do that, let's say on Wednesday, well, 11:42 a.m. works. We'll pick a start date, and we'll pick a start date of, well, let's put it in the future, because I don't want this, because this may still go out to my students. And the end date will be, it has to be after the start date. So I'll only do it for a 14-day period. And I'm going to pick a criteria, and what I'm going to do is make it for all users in here, except now it's not going to be based on login activities, it's going to be a release condition. And there's a lot of release conditions here. It could be based on whether they've submitted an assignment. So you could set something up so if they submit an assignment in an assignment folder, it basically thanks them. You know, thank you for the submission. I'll be providing you with feedback by this date. It could be if you provided feedback so that whenever whenever they get feedback, it could be a note going out reminding them that they've done that. It could be the score on a rubric. So if you have a rubric score, you know, if it's a percentage score or if it's a point score, it could go out whenever the score exceeds a given threshold. Or it could be if there's no submission. So if they were supposed to submit something and didn't, you could create this. It could be if you're using the award criteria. I didn't mean to do that, but it could be an award criteria. So if you set up certificates or badges or something similar within Brightspace, you could notify the student that they've met the criteria for that. So you first set up the criteria for the award, and then you send them a notification, and you could repeat that hourly, or you could repeat that weekly, but as long as you only do it the first time it's generated. Now, the checklist we mentioned earlier is really helpful just in providing students with reminders. They have to check it off themselves, but you could send a little note congratulating them on completing the checklist for that module. It could be that they completed a checklist item if you want to really get more granular with it. If they haven't completed a checklist and a due date is approaching, you could remind them that they haven't completed all the elements of the checklist. Or if there's a checklist item that they haven't completed, you could automate that for any one of those and send them a reminder that they haven't yet completed that. Now, the roster thing is more if they enroll in a group, or if they, most of these aren't going to really be that relevant, because the org unit enrollment would be if they're added to, well, if you have a group, say, for a teaching center, potentially, you could add an org unit. And if we were able to, we are not able to here, but if we were able to allow people to join, you could have, whenever people join that group, you could have a welcome message automatically going out, and that could be set daily or even hourly. And as long as it's a one-time run, and people would get a notification of that as once they join. I think in SUNY that sort of thing isn't allowed. I know it's not allowed here as much as we'd like it to be for a teaching center group. It could be also if they're in this particular section. So you could have a welcome to the class. So if they welcome to that class section. I'm not sure the date of enrollment, how that would work. But in any case, you have competencies that you can define. If you're using some of the competencies, if you're doing competency-based education where you have competencies defined, you could send notes out to students when they've achieved certain competencies. If you tie learning objectives to particular assessments, you could let students know that they've met those learning objectives. If this is, again, a score on a rubric associated with a competency and so on. Or it could be tied to whether they visited specific content, whether they've not done it. Now, this is just saying that they clicked on the link. It's not saying they've actually read something there or done anything. It's just whether or not they've accessed it. And in terms of discussions, this is one that I've used, and we'll show that in just a minute. Oh yeah, oh, there's two more things. Oh, sorry, I don't want to spend too much time on this, sorry. So here, it could be scores, surveys, there's more topics, so Maggie just reminded me. So what we're going to do here is just do a grade on a grade item. So we're going to go into grade item, and then it selects the grade items. And I've got a lot of things here, but what I'm going to choose is the overall class grade, which is somewhere in here, there is an overall class grade. I thought
I'm looking, it's hard.
there is not.
Maybe final submission on the podcast, for instance.
Well, okay, yeah, so so I could do that. So, you know, the criteria here, you get less than and equal to, less than, greater than or equal to, greater, or between if you want to define a grade range. So let's say I'm going to define this, and I do use percentage base here. So let's say if it's greater than 90%, I'm going to create it, and then I'm going to, and basically, then I'm going to define the action. I'm going to go in here, send an email when the criteria is satisfied, and I'm going to put it to the initiating user. Except I'm going to spell it correctly, and do the same sort of thing before. And I'm just going to put some junk in here because there are other topics that we haven't gotten to, and then put in the message and begin with, you know, include their name, initiating user, first name. So I'm going to cancel, and then basically I would go back and click enable, and this would all be done. Okay. So, so that's how to use intelligent agents. They're really flexible. And, you know, what I'd encourage is just defining a few of them the first time. And once you do, by the way, if you define it something for a module and you want to repeat it, you can just click copy it over and update it for the next module, update the dates and whatever it's tied to. And that way it's really easy to create new ones. And you don't have to retype the initiating user, first name, etc. Any questions on that? Okay, now the next thing, that we listed was the checklist, and I mentioned those, but we should show you how to create them. And basically here you just go under course tools, and then course admin, and then click on checklist, and basically you create them by clicking on new checklist. And well, we can do that. And basically what you do is you pick a name for it. Let's say this is a module 15 checklist. I have 14 modules in the course. And then basically you could put in a description. You don't need to, students won't see it. That's just for your own use. And then click save. And then what will happen is it gives you categories and items. So you pick categories, which are just groupings. You could choose no category if you don't want any specific ones, but let's say a common category might be readings or something like that. And yes, checklists do course copy. So once you have them done, they copy right over. So I'm going to create a reading category, and then basically you would create items under that. So you would then click a new item, and let's say this is read chapter 15. If it was aligned, it's not, but if it was aligned with chapters in a book, it would be read chapter 15, and then you could put in a description that students would be able to see. If you put in a due date, it will show up in the course calendar, so students get that reminder when they log in of all the due dates. Well, I'm sorry, if you put in a due date, it will list it, but if you want it to show up in the course calendar, you just click display in calendar, and then that becomes listed in the course calendar as well as in the checklist. And then you could pick other categories. I think, Sandra, we talked about this in an earlier time. I think you use something like
like read, do, watch,
watch and do, or something like that. So you could have categories for watching videos, for, you know, and things that they have to do that week. And those are basically what you do. So you have categories, you could list multiple items under that, you could create new categories, add items under that. And you can either put the calendar entry under the items themselves, if it's a gradable category, or you could do it here. You probably don't want to do it both because it will show up in the calendar twice. So, but for items that are done outside of the class where there's no gradable item in Brightspace, use the calendar entry and it will, or add the calendar, and then students will see the due date, even if it's a performance in class or something that they're going to do outside of the class or turn in through Google Drive or some other mechanism. And students love the checklist. One feedback I've gotten many times is that students really found the checklist useful and they wish that all their instructors would do that. So it's one that I would really strongly recommend. And then the other thing that we had listed as we were going to cover, and again, I'm sorry for doing this so quickly, is accordions. And let's go back to content. And accordions are just a really convenient way of listing things together. For example, in each of my modules, I have some, no, apparently not in that module. In nearly all the modules, I have some YouTube videos for students. And I just group them that way because I want to keep things as in Brightspace, it's encouraged that we use a flat structure, that we don't have folders and subfolders and so, or we don't have subfolders within modules, that students can just go in a linear fashion from beginning to end. And here, for example, let me pick another module. Here we go. So we can, yeah, so here, for example, I have, do I not have videos in this class?
I think you do.
Here they go,
For
okay. Review videos,
Yeah.
use as needed. And basically I group them all in
An accordion.
in an accordion folder. And it's just taking a really long time for this to load. So maybe it would be just as easy to show how to create one. And it's really easy to do. Well, yeah, to use more than 6, there's 2 things you can do. I'm not sure why there's a link in there, but basically it expands things. So I have topics here on price ceilings and price floors. I have one on the concept of surplus. Oh, it was just because it was highlighted. And one on labor and financial markets, which were subtopics within that particular module. And it's just a really nice compact way of grouping information together so students don't have to scroll way down on a page to do things. And so let's just go to a really quick overview. And to answer Candy's question, you can either edit the HTML, or if you want to avoid that, if you have more than 6, you could just choose, you could just put 2 right next to each other. And as far as students will look, it will look, if you have 8, you could put a 6 and a 2 accordion right next to each other, copy and paste the other one in, and it will look like it's one long one. But what you would do is you would just go to your add content or upload and create. You would create a file, a web page, and then to create the accordion, all you do is you don't want to do this on something you've already created because it's going to wipe it out. It's going to give you a warning. And there's the accordion structure. And the way it's set up here, basically, if you want, say, an accordion with 5 elements, you just delete everything except for the 5 elements. So I deleted 1 through 4, and I'm going to delete the 6th one here, and I'm going to delete it. And there's the basic structure of the accordion. And you would put in the content here, you would put the label here, and basically you'd edit this just like you would any page of Brightspace. Yeah, if you do a YouTube insert, you can either put in a link to the video in YouTube, or you can do the embed code, but then you have to edit the HTML, I think, in order to do that.
I always do the insert and embed code in there. And then when I want, as John mentioned, when I want to do, you know, let's say 10 accordions, I literally just remove, like I just remove the accordion title. And so I just delete, you know, some of that text until like the 5 and the 6 are butting up right next to each other, and it looks very seamless. So if you play around with kind of, if you play around with merging, you know, the 2s and the 3s and so forth, it actually works out really well. You just,
Yeah, so, you know,
I said,
I normally just edit the HTML. I find a block, if I want, say, 8 items in it, I'll copy, and 6 is the limit. I will copy 2 of the blocks I'll edit the HTML, copy 2 of the block, put them down at the end, and then just replace the text. So we'll go 1 through 6, and then it will go 1 and 2 by default. You just type in the new information and it should work, but it's probably easier to put adjacent accordions, I think.
Yeah.
John, can you show me where you get to the HTML in here to do
Oh,
that?
So once you're in here, what you would do is you would click on this little symbol right here for the source code.
Ah, okay.
And then when you do that, it will show you the HTML, you know, and if you're not comfortable with HTML, it's probably easier to avoid that. But you notice right here, so for example, this is accordion 5 of 5. The category for one block would just be right from here down to the end of that block. So it starts with chord and it goes down to the end of that division. So I basically just copy it right down to here, and that would be by copying and pasting that immediately below, it would give one more accordion item. Yeah, so if you're not comfortable with that, completely ignore that. But that's just what I do because, you know, I've been working with HTML since the 1990s.
What I do is, I just butt up the, you know, the accordions next to each other, and
it will look like
it
one
looks
big
like
accordion,
one,
as long as you don't have the image at the top of the second one.
right, yeah.
And again, one thing I would suggest to make your course a little nicer is just to get rid of the images in there and replace them with ones of your own. There's a lot of good Creative Commons images. You can take photos or other things. I use Canva and I got the shape already predefined, the dimensions, and they have a lot of consent. I have a paid account. There's lots of imagery I can just use directly from there that's already licensed. But there's a lot of good public domain images you can use, or Creative Commons images, because I know I get tired of seeing that damn coffee cup and you know, and so forth. And I imagine students who see that in most of their courses could get tired pretty easily. So basically, though, the main point is that we got all these wonderful tools in Brightspace that allow personalized communication, personalized feedback, and so forth. And in large classes especially, so much of that can be automated. And students really appreciate the reminders. And one of the things that will happen is, both with the reminders I'm getting from Waymaker and this, is students will send me a note afterwards saying, you know, thanks for the reminder. You know, I've been struggling with this a little bit. I'm going to do better next time. And it just opens up a channel of communication that wouldn't, in a large class, it doesn't always exist, because when you're one of 400 students, it's really easy to feel intimidated. But if you're getting emails from your instructor, even the ones that, you know, they know have to be automated, they still respond to. And it does create a dialogue, and they're much more likely to come in for office hours. They're much more likely to come in for help than they ever were before I had all these tools. And well, I've been using these in Angel. I really miss them tremendously in Blackboard, but again, at least Waymaker provided some of that personalized communication.
Yeah, and it's really, I think, it's really nice when, you know, you kind of repeat some of these tools, either across your courses or within different modules, because it really gives students that, like checklists, they start to form that expectation, and it helps keep them organized, and they are very clear, they understand what the course expectations are, I think, very readily.
So any other questions? We've gone a little bit over time.
Yeah, just a little bit over time. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And of course, you know, this session's recorded, so you can always check back with it. You can always reach out to me or John on any of these topics.
And by the way, in the last session, there was a note about the reading group that Brockport's doing, or read,
Oh,
or the
nice.
reading. And, you know, if there's anyone there who wants to connect with us or whatever, or vice versa, it would be good to connect on that. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
I was on the IITG grant committee that reviewed the proposal because the IITG grant funded that project at Brockport. But it's a great book, and I'm glad it's happening. So
Excellent.
great.
Thanks.
Okay.
All
Well,
right, take
thank
care,
you.
everyone.